Merry Christmas, nerds. My present to you is to remind you that the mindfulness and the attentiveness to our everyday resting patterns really pays off. And I'm going to show you how my lack of attention to that became an exponential disadvantage, but I figured it out yesterday. So guys, many of you know my story. My hips were so uneven and torn, and probably mostly from driving 3 hours a day in mountain roads for many, many years and having a tech job where I sat all the time. These like crooked hips, right? The hips getting more and more crooked. The driving asymmetry, that the way my body was doing it, was the more I pushed with my right foot to brake, gas, brake, gas, brake, gas, the more it was pushing my right hip back. That was pulling my left hip forward. So of course the hips were wearing unevenly over time. So I was so happy when I learned, pelvis asymmetry, this is a spiral that I'm going to clean up the spiral. And then I made these huge gains in my practices as I got strength. I got openness on the back of the pelvis. I got strength in my haunches. I had no idea when I overshot, and my right side of my hip started to be dominant in front because I wasn't doing anything to consciously train that pattern at all. As far as I could tell, in my conscious movement practices, I was leveling out my hips and making space in the back. Well, here's what happened. I found it last night as I was making stuffed mushrooms, and I had my app looking through, finding my mushrooms, and I'll show you what happened. This right hip started to migrate forward to go under my head and go under my hand, because our head always wants to be in the most supported place. So if my head wants to be over here, it's most likely this hip is going to come and try to scoop underneath my head. So doing all this right-handed, one-sided phone stuff on a counter while I sort of had split focus, like there's something else going on. I looked down and saw that this hip had jutted forward a couple of inches. And the worst part is not having any idea how much time I had spent in that position. I go to ChatGPT and I say, well, I'm missing this ingredient. And the big worry here is I'm in this unconscious position for God knows how long. So the beautiful thing is I found it, and then I noticed what had started to happen is I would even go walking and this whole side would turn off. I'd be like, I cannot believe I messed up again. And I realized, and the other thing that would happen is because I was so used to holding this unconscious position, like, I'm looking something up, I'm checking, I'm even in Seiza position on the ground, kind of turning myself to the right and subtly shifting this twist in my hips. So I knew that the fact that walking was turning into these scary moments, I knew something had to change, and I found it. And the problem was I was doing all this one-legged work, and I could not sense that my pelvis wanted, the resting position of my pelvis on one side was so much further forward than my resting position of my pelvis on the other side. So I was just training this dysfunction in deeper and deeper and deeper. And so this is a reminder of a couple of things. One, standing is hard because you're not resting against much. So it's really easy to get stuck in a pretty effed up position. So that's one reason if we could take both hips back to really, lock in on a squared up, cleaned up position of the hips. Second is, and this is one reason too, standing desks can get really tweaky too. It could be I thrust both of my hips forward. It could be I thrust one hip forward, or I thrust the other hip forward. So this is also a reminder, I guess this is number 2, a reminder we always need to bring this symmetry back in to scrub out these imbalances between the two sides between the sides of our body. Asymmetry is great for movement, but we need a baseline of symmetry that's clean enough for everything to rotate around these axes, right? So I'm glad I found it, and guess what? When I have been taking my walks since I discovered this. Pas de problème. I am good. I don't come back with this weird panic of how, after all the work I've done, could walking not feel right? Well, it was here in this unconscious, I would fall into a deep focus on a screen, thinking I was only going to be there for a second. Of course, guys, I got to do some screen-free time. I'll probably be taking a hiatus in the holiday break. But anyhow, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Let's have a great year. Bye.